Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening, and this is kind of an update on there evidently is a ceasefire. As to how long that's going to last, who knows? Kind of quiet over there right now. And Larry, how are you doing on your mountaintop?
Oh, sitting up here, kind of just cleaning off the face of my iPhone, and I only had 2 missile alerts early this morning, and then it stopped, so I knew something was up.
Yeah, it appears as though they have reached some sort of an agreement, at least temporarily, which allows, of course, Hamas and the rest of them to rearm. And you've done a little research on what's going on over there about Israel. What's your take on why they're allowing this ceasefire? We've had ceasefires forever, and all they do is rearm and then attack again. So there's got to be some reason why they're allowing this ceasefire to account particularly when they've got a lot of this information, or I should say military armaments, all along the border there of Gaza. What do you think is going on?
Well, if you look closely at the attitude of the Israeli, you will notice that unless they're taken by surprise, they really do like to attack first. And so, saying that, you have to look at Netanyahu, that's been doing this a very long time. And I think what we're seeing, because of the fact that they've accepted this Hamas ceasefire after they said they wouldn't even going to talk about it anymore, and then at the same time they're accepting a ceasefire from Hamas, they're sending the very last message, according to the Israelis, to Lebanon, saying that unless they dismantle the missile factories and all of that, or locations inside Beirut, that they're going to remove them themselves. And we know how Israel does that. You know, you can look at Iraq and the nuclear reactor situation there, or you can look at the actual early nuclear reactor in Syria that they took out that the Koreans were building. But either way, it appears, and from some of the intel now, you know, intelligence is just information gathering. I mean, it's not saying it's perfect. It's not saying it's always right. But there is still intel coming out that are indicating that Israel is holding back from a ground war in Gaza because they know the minute they begin the ground war in Gaza and get tied down, that Lebanon's going to begin to fire missiles and Syria's going to begin to fire missiles, and they're really going to get hit. And the test case, it appears, of the first Hamas attacks that fired over 500 rockets was a test case that they were successful in overwhelming the Iron Dome system. So that gave Iran and Syria and Hezbollah the knowledge that they could literally, by the number of missiles, overwhelm the defense systems of Israel and really cause some destruction in Israel's main cities, which is what they want to do. Now, this is. I'd like your opinion on this, because there is intelligence. Israel, behind the scenes, is really holding back from a ground war beginning, because when this ground war does begin, and they've already indicated it's going to, they are going to also, if the intel is correct, they're going to hit and destroy the Russian Haiman air base in Syria and all the S-300 places, and they're also going to hit Beirut, Lebanon, and they're going to attack Syria. And there is a report, and I cannot vet it, I cannot verify it, but there is a report that the rich men, if you will, that's a good, name that you give them, rich men have tried to make a deal with Israel that they will give Israel $7 trillion if Israel will attack Damascus and kill Assad and destroy his government.
Wow. Well, that would be Isaiah chapter 17, and that would be something that Israel would probably like to do. Anyway, Damascus, Syria, that is their enemy. I mean, Assad has made that perfectly clear. Israel told Assad, get your Iranian troops out of there, and Assad said, no, I'll do what I want to do here. And Iran is my friend, and therefore I will keep their military here. And, of course, Israel, like America, really has no legal, I'd put it that way, under international law anyway, right to be doing what they're doing, and especially the United States. We have absolutely no right to be attacking Syria or anyone else, for that matter. Syria hasn't attacked the United States. So this is just a program that I think, what was his name? Not Bill Cohen, the guy that was head of NATO, a general. Can't think of his name right now. But remember, he said he was shown that they were going to overthrow 7 countries in the Middle East, of which Syria was one of them. And it seems like they're being, how do I say, frustrated in that endeavor. However, I think what we are watching, and Cindy found this kind of interesting because I hadn't really thought of it at all. Zephaniah chapter 2 may be exactly what we're watching. I want to, or at least it's a forewarning, let's put it that way, of Zephaniah chapter 2. I know that's one of your favorite prophets, Larry. It's a very dangerous chapter, I think. What's your take on that? Because it appears to be that, the cities are named and they were hit in this exchange, and it just seems kind of interesting that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you said what I think about that. I'm one of those people that really look at Zephaniah like it's prophetic at the end, because
yes,
it appears that it is almost the deluge all over again, and with the exception of all the sea life is removed too. But I like what you said, Zephaniah 2. Let me read the first two verses here, though, because it's so much jumps out at me about them. This could be directly at America and Babylon, if you will. Listen to this. I'm reading from the Amplified King James.
Mm-hmm.
It's chapter 2 of Zephaniah, verse 1. Collect your thoughts. Yes, unbend yourselves in submission, and see if there is no sense of shame and no consciousness of sin left in you, O shameless nation, not desirous or desired. Verse 2. The time for repentance is speeding by like chaff whirled before the wind. Therefore, consider before God's decree brings forth the curse upon you, before the time to repent is gone like the drifting chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord comes upon you, yes, before the day of the wrath of the Lord comes upon you. So anyway, that's pretty tough.
Well, it's not only tough, but tells you exactly where this is, the time of Jacob's trouble, the wrath of the Lord. A lot of people say, well, the wrath of the Lord doesn't start until something like the midpoint of the tribulation, but Jesus himself undoes the seals. He's God. It's almost like God the Father says to God the Son, have at it, Son, for what they did to you, and then I'll take over after you've unleashed all the 6 seals against the United States and essentially against the world. But America seems to be one of the ones that really gets it. I'll read some more here, and this is from the King James Version, verse 3. Seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. So this is just before the Lord's anger is brought forth, which is the time of Jacob's trouble. Now listen to what it says in verse 4. For Gaza shall be forsaken, Ashkelon a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Woe unto the inhabitants of the seacoast. And he goes on to say, the land of the Philistines, which is obviously Palestine. Now I will even destroy thee, and there shall be no inhabitant. Boy, that's kind of where this fight was actually being fought. Wasn't it Ashkelon that got hit? I think it was.
Oh, yeah, all in that region. And this sounds so much, that last verse you read sounded so much incredibly close to what Henry Gruber was shown.
Yeah, I think what we're watching was a preliminary warning of the Lord. Now, this can be that they can take out Gaza anytime they want. There's no question Israel can do them in, but there's also no question that Zechariah says that Israel, and actually Isaiah chapter 17 says that Israel's not going to come out of this very well. Jacob's flesh waxes very lean, which is indicative of millions of Israelis are going to perish in this upcoming battle. And it seems like Israel is being forced into this war. The Lord knows how to manipulate people and the nations to do what he wants to do. And I don't think people realize that the agenda of the Lord is going to be the one that plays out, not the rich men of the earth. However, he allows the rich men to do what they want to do. And they are maneuvering the world into World War III so that they can have their new world order and the rise of the phoenix. Very, very interesting that in Norway, the phoenix bird was displayed in the heavens by northern lights. And I find that extremely interesting because it occurred on 11/11, the same time that the war began. And these are all warnings. Whether it's a week, whether it's several days or a month away, doesn't really matter. We know it's coming, and the Lord has told us it's coming. But here's what's really dangerous, Larry, and I want your opinion on this. Verse 15 is kind of interesting. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly, that said in her heart, I am, and there is none else beside me. How has she become a desolation, a place for beasts to lie down in? Everyone that passes by her shall hiss and wag his hand. Now, that's all repeated in the taking of United States of America, mighty Babylon the Great. Isaiah chapter 47. Sit thou silent, get thee into darkness. Now there's your communications gone and your electricity gone. O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no longer be called Lady of the Kingdoms. Now, don't forget, we have a statue of a lady in New York Harbor, the great city, Babylon. I was wroth with my people, verse 6. I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hand. Thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient thou hast very heavily laid thy yoke. And thou saidest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore, hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, none else beside me. The same phraseology. He's talking about America. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day. In other words, suddenly, without any warning whatever, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in thy perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. Now, you have to go back into Jeremiah 50:51. You got to go into Revelation, and when you do tie all that together, it's very, very obvious that this is the United States that's going to be taken out. Verse 10, for thou trusted in thy wickedness, and hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it has perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, here it is, number 2, I am, and none else beside me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it rises, and mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Well, that's exactly what verse 15 says. She's destroyed. And if you go into some of the other prophecies about America Babylon, it says that the people who pass by her will hiss, and they will wag their hands and shake their heads. Why? My question is this, Larry. What do you think? Why is this showing up in this particular scripture that's talking about the taking of Gaza and the war? And as you said, this is very definitely end of days. I mean, it very definitely claims it's just before the time of Jacob's trouble and the wrath of the Lord. So why are we showing up there?
Yeah, and what's interesting, too, was you read in the verse about, being hidden. So there is some that will, during this time, be hidden, and we don't really know what type of hiding that is, but some will be hidden. And I was going to mention, too, you mentioned darkness.
Yes.
Finland just reported that they believed Russia used some type of EMP weapon on Finland, and it's not really out in the news yet, but the whole country went black. And it was temporary. What? It lasted for a while, and they lost all power, all everything. And they believe that Russia used or tested an EMP weapon on Finland. So this may be why, and suddenly, too, Stuart, about the time this happened, NATO stopped all of their drills in the Baltic and broke up, and that's when Trump began pulling stuff back. So that's interesting that you read that.
Yeah, boy. Well, we thought that North Korea obviously had, they've got some satellites that come up from the south, come over to the north. They seem to come up over the center of the country and slightly to the east, but mostly in the center, depending on where the orbit is. But there are a lot of people that have wondered that that's an EMP device. An EMP device is low yield as far as the explosion goes, but it's very, very deadly as far as taking out, it could take out the entire North American grid. And because we have stupidly set up our grid system so that it can cascade all areas of the country. I don't know why they did that other than the fact that it's deliberate. And I've often wondered why nobody pays any attention to the EMP. Scientists have come in and warned over and over and over, harden your stuff or we're going to really get clobbered either by an enemy like North Korea or the Soviets. And I use the word Soviet because if you really paid attention to what, it wasn't Khrushchev, it was Gorbachev, who said that perestroika and glasnost were only for the West, that it was all a sham, and that the Soviet Union would remain basically intact. It would just appear that it had broken up. Well, if you pay any attention to the Russian military and their exercises and who takes place in those exercises, isn't it odd that it's most of the nations that were part of the Soviet Union that are still doing it? I mean, come on, folks. The Soviet Union still exists, and in a major war, they will all come against us. And the Bible says that we are surrounded just like Israel is surrounded. But anyway, I think this is warning us that the demise of the United States is somehow tied to the taking of Gaza, which probably means that it also includes Isaiah 17. It may also include Daniel chapter 8. What do you think, Larry? It just acts like one domino takes to the other, and they just all fall together rapidly.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Can you imagine if Israel and the U.S. go together and take out Russia's Himmelin air base in Syria? What would follow that?
Yeah, with what Putin has already said, and a lot of people think Putin's kind of stupid. Actually, he isn't. He's probably the best chess player we have had on planet Earth for some time. He outwits everybody, and he's tough as nails. If we go in and take out a Russian air base in Syria and we kill any Russians, we're at war. It will be war. And they're already kind of, very angry at NATO because NATO keeps encroaching on the borders of Russia constantly, building more and more military bases, setting up missiles, batteries. And, Russia really is being isolated a little bit at a time. And now we have word that Russia and China are getting together. Russia does have some allies. And the United States of America is, as I said, being encircled. And nobody's paying any attention to it. We have reports out of Mexico and Venezuela. By the way, Venezuela, have you heard any more about what's going on down there, Larry?
No, that's really quiet at the moment. As a matter of fact, there's not even any more reports about armor moving down that way. But in the background, something's up. There is something interesting, though. The caravans are coming, and they appear to be moving more towards coming in on California, actually. And California's welcoming them. So that's going to be a problem. But it's interesting that there are rumors now that because this Nielsen over the Department of Homeland Security has been balking on trying to help get a wall going and really put her people to work in the borders, that Trump is about to relieve her of her duties and appoint somebody else. So something is up. That actually was released on Lou Dobbs tonight.
Oh, really? Well, why would she be balking unless she's deep state? And why are we having some of our military generals tell Trump to more or less stuff it if they don't agree with his order? I mean, what we have here is a possibility that we could be attacked and Trump tries to get our military to do something and they just decide they won't do it. We know from prophecy that when we are attacked, the military hides in the mountains and in the dens, like Cheyenne Mountain and whatnot, and they refuse to fight. And America basically goes down. And we don't really retaliate. You remember, who was it that had that vision where he was on the Empire State Building and watching the Statue of Liberty? Remember?
Was that A.A. Allen? I can't remember exactly.
I think
it might have been somebody else.
Yeah, and he said that there's an attack upon our freedom, and then out of the north we are attacked with gas attack, chemical weapons, I guess, and then missiles come up from everywhere, and we're done. We're taken out that fast.
Yeah, that's
Go
interesting,
ahead.
Stuart. Just what you just said is very interesting because you said that he said we were attacked from the north also, and do you know that intelligence agencies now are beginning to warn that because of all the foreign individuals let into Canada that our northern border is now at risk. Here we are, won't even build a wall to protect our southern border, and now we're finding out the northern border's at risk. So we're just ripe. We're ripe because we have a deep state government that refuses to follow the president, and that's when your enemies encircling you and they take you out.
Yep, it's well, you were a policeman for years, a detective, and you know how all that evil people work. And when I was up in Canada some time ago, a long time ago actually, I was told that there were Chinese and Russian people up there, and there was a Royal Mounted Police guy who issued a report on Chinese influence in Canada, and it was really overwhelming what he came up with, what he had investigated of their influence on Canada. Canada is not our friend, and it may be our own fault because a lot of people don't realize that we had actually planned to invade Canada a long, long time ago. Nothing ever came of it. But, when you have something like that, most people don't forget it. And it's going to be very, very interesting. You're absolutely right. I don't think Canada is our friend, and I heard via the grapevine, quote unquote, that Russia and China had made an agreement with Canada for the invasion of the United States, that they would be given the northern part of the United States, and it would become part of Canada at the end. That of course you can't trust the Russians or the Chinese. They'll probably try and take it all. But hey, we're on the verge, folks. We really are. And if this is just a forewarning, then the tying in of this, Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 15, is a definite reference to the United States of America. You got to remember that the United States is the first nation that goes in this time of terrible trouble. All the nations of the earth who have ships in the sea watch the United States be taken out. And I was a pilot for years and years and flew out of New York when I was working for the General Electric Company. And all you got to do is fly out over the coast, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ships out there waiting to unload, waiting to dock and unload. And it's very, very real that the ships of the nations would see the United States go up in smoke, and especially New York City. And 9/11 in New York City was a warning from the Lord that this was going to happen on a much, much bigger scale. Anyway, Larry, anything else quick?
Oh, I tell people it's a good time to get your house in order and stay in your prayer closet because, like you said, between now and the 1st of January, it's critical. And really, you were talking about the 17th.
Yes. And I still have to issue a warning for the 17th. And it took me a while to get into why that's true. But there's something going on that we don't know. Hopefully nothing happens. But it's a heads up, and something major could happen. Something is going on behind the scenes. Trump's involved in it. Putin's involved in it. Bibi's involved in it. Psalm 2, don't forget it. And they have to spring this trap. They don't have any choice. They got to do what they got to do. They're committed to it, and they're not going to stop now. They've invested years and years and billions of dollars to bring this about. They're not going to stop now. They're going to do it, and we're going to be the victims of it. Anyway, thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on with your insight, and we'll go tomorrow night too if there's more to talk about. And anyway, very, very interesting. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Heads up, get yourself prepared, and with food, water, and shelter, the main things, and hope that you're under the wings of the Lord for protection. Anyway, thanks, and good night, everyone.